McLaren has recently opened up about a claim that Red Bull made regarding the 2024 season, and while everybody expects that the Woking-based squad would be the closest outlet to the Austrian team, it does seem like we're not going to witness this scenario at all. Even with Horner labelling McLaren as the fiercest competitor that his team should be afraid of, Stella has spoken in another direction, revealing further fears for his team's fans. To add salt to the wound, Norris' self-criticism has arisen yet again, and what could be a breakthrough season between him and Piastri, with his contract running out in 2025 and McLaren needing to deliver a race-winning car to keep him at bay. Could we see McLaren regress in 2024, and is there any way that Stella is trying to downplay the chances because he loves to enter the season as an underdog? It goes without saying that the best surprise for the 2023 season was McLaren and the gains they managed to make in just a couple of upgrade packages. But even with such a great and impressive turnaround, the Woking-based squad failed to win a race in the season. Many would consider this to be too much to dream of, so the general opinion from McLaren is that if they continue with the current development rate, with the new technical staff they hired, led by Rob Marshall as their new technical director, then 2024 would be theirs to take. Even Red Bull pointed at McLaren as being their potentially fiercest competitors, with Verstappen constantly praising the consistency that McLaren had throughout the 2023 season. But Horner's latest statement was a bit more, elaborating on where we could see McLaren in the upcoming campaign. And when talking about this matter, he went on to say, "Imitation is the biggest form of flattery. I think that is the way Formula One operates, so I'm sure there'll be several cars that look like the RB19 next year. Yes, we were surprised by the other team's lack of development because in 2022 it was a very new set of regulations. It always takes a while for these things to settle and then converge. With stable regulations, we'll get into diminishing returns anyway. We're probably closer to the top of the development curve already. I think McLaren had a great second half of the year. There were times when they were our closest competitor. They have strengthened their team, and Rob Marshall will be an asset, but it's not just about one person. There are 700 or 800 people in an F1 team, and it needs the whole team to come together. With Norris and Piastri, who is really impressive as a debutant, they could well be a factor next year." Obviously, Red Bull acknowledges that without any larger changes in the technical regulations, we should not be expecting any other team to suddenly pop up if they don't discover something magical in a 3-month period. So the development curve should remain the same. And if there is one team out there that managed to elevate that curve, it's definitely McLaren. But the Woking-based squad does not believe they have what it takes to challenge Red Bull more frequently in 2024. Even though the take from Andrea Stella, the team principal of McLaren, was not fully in a pessimistic view, it is very disheartening to hear that the team that made the biggest progress might not be able to continue with this rate in 2024. And for McLaren, some of the challenges would be to actually establish themselves as the second fastest team for the majority of the season in order to challenge Red Bull, because they will have strong competition in Mercedes, Aston Martin and Ferrari. All three of these teams are promising gains that they have been making in the wind tunnels during this winter period. When talking about the upcoming campaign, Stella was adamant that there is so much work to be done and that these false expectations are not something he wants to instill in their fans' minds. Elaborating further, Stella went on to say, "Our philosophy is to be very fair to what we know. We don't have to create false expectations because the reality will come to you in a violent way, and we don't want to find ourselves in that position. At the same time, we don't want to downplay too much and then find out we weren't ready to fight at the front and we didn't make good decisions based on that. We will just stick to the data, be realistic and be honest. That is our philosophy." You like to see what kind of progress you are making in the wind tunnel in the computer simulations, and you know that a certain rate will mean you are 0.2, half a second, 0.7 better at the start of a season. Realistically, we know that if we want to retain our competitiveness going into next season, you need to have half a second in hand, otherwise you're moving backwards. This might sound a bit demotivating for the remainder of the grid as well, because if the team with the most gains in 2024 believes they won't be able to achieve what the majority of the F1 would expect them to achieve, then what do they have to hope for in 2024 other than a potential P2 fight? The FIA banning the development of the 2026 cars in an aerodynamical aspect goes to show that they want to see competition in 2024 and 2025, but if the teams are very reluctant as to whether or not they'll be able to compete with Red Bull, then it's not something we're going to be looking forward to, unfortunately. To worsen the situation, Norris has opened up about the self-criticism he has constantly applied in McLaren, which has been quite emphasised since Piastri joined him as a teammate, and this has quite the potential to ruin his driving confidence and his ability to perform at the top of his level. Norris has gone on to call himself the S-word during the Qatar GP, missing out on a pole position and a sprint race win, and while he's not concerned with the way he's treating himself, Stella has raised the question of this unique and rather destructive approach, adding, "The way he addresses his own performance I think deserves attention because he just seems very harsh on himself." On the other hand, Norris doesn't see an issue with this, even though many experts, including Nico Rosberg, offered advice for him to not take things so personally. When elaborating on this, the McLaren driver went on to say, "As much as I get annoyed with myself on Saturdays at times and people are like, you shouldn't beat yourself up and all of that stuff, a lot of my best performances come then on that next day, and it doesn't affect me when I go and drive the next day because I'm like, oh, I still just messed up Saturday. Just because I say it and things, it doesn't mean that. I think a lot of people have different opinions on it, but I've always been that way." Obviously, there is a lot of pressure on Norris to put his name as the #1 driver in McLaren, and with Piastri having a phenomenal rookie season to the point of him actually having Steiner considering him a rookie driver if one of the veterans decides to opt out of Haas, it's going to be very interesting to see how things will pan out in the upcoming season. McLaren definitely has the machinery and the development curve to take things to Red Bull's neck, but the comments that Stella made could deteriorate the team's ultimate goal, winning races and championships. And just to remind you, this is the exact condition that Norris put out there for McLaren if they are to fight for championships sooner rather than later. So if they do not manage to build the perfect car until 2025, it's very likely that Norris will be looking for his way out of the Woking-based squad. Be that as it may, there are still a lot of intangibles left to solve, but what we do know is that McLaren is the team we should not be writing off in 2024, even though Mercedes and Ferrari have threatened that the cars they have ready for the upcoming season are going to be extremely challenging and could alter the championship in all shapes and forms. McLaren have upgraded their car until the very last race of the season, and that enables them to enter the upcoming season with a very strong foundation. So the comments from Stella could be very well meaning to demotivate the competition and create some kind of negative cloud around them. But there isn't that much to lose from them either. If he's right, he can just say, "I told you so." But if he's wrong and McLaren turns out to be a quality championship contender, then it all pans out for the team. With this in mind, what do you think about McLaren's remarks about the 2024 season? Let us know in the comments below.